Hi there, Joy again from Adventures in Menopause. Today we're actually going to do a very quick and easy pumpkin. I'm pumpkin carving in my jammies today. I wasn't feeling well, so I took a day off work, which is good. It's a yucky rainy day out there. Who wants to be at work anyways? But I'm not good at boredom. So instead of sitting around feeling sorry for myself, I thought I'd have some fun and carve some pumpkins. And I'm working on a blog post, and the blog post is located on my website, which is Adventures in Menopause, as I said. You can find it online at http colon 2 backslashes and then survivinglifeover40.com. And what I'm doing on there is I'm doing a blog post as well as a series of videos on pumpkin carving because I love to do it, and because I know a lot of people who have said that they're a little leery about whether they're going to be able to do it right. And pumpkin carving is the easiest thing in the world. Really all you need to do is be able to draw and cut out simple shapes. If you can do circles, squares, triangles, you can pretty much carve a pumpkin. And so the first one that I'm going to do today is the simplest design I could possibly think of to prove just that point. Now they're not perfect circles. Put that up there so you can see it a bit better maybe. There we go. They're not perfect circles at all. And the reason being, I have something that I bought that's really cool, and it's like a plant stand. And the plant stand has wrought iron work on the front. And basically what you do is you put your pumpkin behind it, and the wrought iron does the design for you. I thought it was really cool, so I bought it. But I can't stand having an uncarved pumpkin in the house. I don't know why. So what I did is I put this behind the framework, and the framework looks like an owl, which is kind of cool. And I've made this cutout section to match the lines on the owl's eyes from my wrought iron thing, because it's got black eyeball parts and then the framework, and I'd like the eyeballs to glow. So that's why they're not perfect circles. I'm doing a simple design to show you, but in the end this is going to go in my little wrought iron thing. And then I added a little mouth at the bottom, and he's just a basic oval. So basically we've got some not quite round circles and an oval and a couple of half circles, and that's all the design is. So I have washed my pumpkin, and I have dried him so I could draw on him, and I just still have to cut out the top and empty him out. And I did a video already on this, so in the next videos I'm probably going to have this all done before I start. But because this is kind of like the simplest design possible, I figured this would be a good starting point for some people. And that's why I want to show them again, in case they didn't watch my pumpkin carving 101 video that I did yesterday. It's always got the worst timing. My dog, as soon as I start doing one of these videos, decides that it's time to go outside. But he can wait. So this knife is perfect for something like this because it's good and sturdy. This is one of those, if you were around in the 80s like I was, this is a Miracle Blade. They used to have commercials on for these blooming things where you could cut through a tomato and then cut through a tin can and then cut through a tomato again. So anyways, it does work. It's really nice and sharp. And I like to use it for pumpkin carving because it's got the points on the end, which makes it easier to start. And it's got a nice long serrated blade. So I almost always use this when I'm pumpkin carving. It's also really very strong. Now, I've carved all the way around it, and sometimes it's hard to get that piece out. You can kind of stick a knife in and lever it up, like so. And as I mentioned in my last video, when you're cutting the lid, and I was talking so I didn't really do it very well, but when you're cutting the lid, you want to do it on an angle. Oh, there, now he's gone to bed. And the angle that on this one isn't very sharp, so I may have, a problem with that later. Normally, if I'm not talking, and therefore not distracted, you want this to be more of an angle. You want to have your blade angled outwards from the center of the pumpkin. And the reason for that is, when you put your candle in the pumpkin, the heat tends to make it shrink a little bit. And when it shrinks, sometimes the top will fall in, land on your candle, put your candle out, and then your pumpkin's done for the night. There's a couple ways to stop that. One is to put the angle around the outside. That means that this section has a wider circumference than this section. And that means there's a better chance it's going to stay because it can't fall in if this piece is smaller than this piece. That makes sense. The second thing is that you want to cut a notch. And again, this has to do with the candle. The candle makes the heat, which is what cooks up the pumpkin, which makes it shrink, which makes it fall in. So if you cut a notch, just a basic shaped notch, in your lid, the steam has somewhere to go. And that's better vented than cooking your pumpkin top. Okay, I'm not too worried about whether this is going to shrink on me because I've decided this year I'm going to use some colored glow sticks to light my pumpkins because I want to see whether or not it will shine through with the color, so whether it'll have like a red face or a green face or a blue face. So that's what I'm doing, so I'm not going to worry about that. I use this to get the seeds and goop out. It seems a little strange, but the reason for it is this. The seeds on the inside are attached to the strings. So if you spend your time like I used to as a kid with a spoon trying to lift out all the seeds and stuff, it takes forever because every time you get some of the seeds out, there's still strings hanging everywhere. So what I discovered is if I take something with a thin metal edge, that's why I use this, and I scrape it along, so it has to be also fairly firm, good sturdy handle. Scrape it along the inside of the pumpkin from the top to the bottom, then I can basically detach all those strings from the side of the pumpkin. And that's what's holding the seeds. So theoretically, once I get all these strings detached from the side of the pumpkin, suddenly everything in the center should fall right out because, like I said, the seeds are attached to the strings, no more strings, therefore no more seeds. I tend to talk while I'm doing this and I do it too fast and I end up still with seeds. So I'm going to try and take a minute here to do it right. And I really have found this is the easiest method I've ever managed to come across to do this. This is the part of the pumpkin carving I really don't like. I don't enjoy getting all goofy, and it's not very creative. So I'd rather just get to the part where I can start carving things. I never really have enough patience for it. So for me, finding a nice easy method is really important. It makes me happy. So I'm almost all the way around here now. And when I get this out, I will show you what I mean, if I can get a close-up, of how the inside of the pumpkin will look. The more strings you can get out, the better, because the strings will hold on to your pieces and make it hard to get your eye and nose pieces and stuff out. And also they'll hang behind the hole. So you could have a nice perfectly round circle cut in there, but it's not going to look perfectly round if it has a bunch of stringy things hanging or clumps of pumpkin hanging from it. So a nice clean inside of a pumpkin makes your design look better later. There might be a little bit on that little bump. There's always a bump in the center of the pumpkin, which is really kind of annoying when you're going to put your candle there. If I've gotten that part off, I think I have, then when I turn this upside down, excuse me for a sec, I promised myself I was going to have a towel or something handy this time, which I forgot last time. So when I turn this upside down, everything should fall out. It should just be a case of shake, 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 bang, 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 and a fairly clean pumpkin. I still have a few seeds, but I will show you how that looks. So, like I say, to me that's a lot easier than trying to scoop with a spoon, which is how I've done it for years. I don't know why I suddenly decided one year to try this, but I'm glad that I did. And once I get the last few seeds out, I think I'll be in fairly good shape for the next part. So I have kind of a collection of tools. As I did mention in my other video, I did buy a kit. Once in a while I buy a kit. And I don't really need it, per se. I don't use most of the items in it. I very seldom use the templates. Some of them are really cool. Just for some reason it feels less creative to use a template unless I find one I really, really like. So I'm going to set the gooey part aside. just use utensils that are hanging around in my kitchen. The one I do use from the kit is the small one. There's an itty bitty, usually very thin. It doesn't have a point on the end, so per se. So it's hard to get it poked through in the first place, and I usually make a starter hole with something else. But the fact that it's really narrow and thin and flexible, for the most part, means that you can get in some tight corners and stuff, and it's easy to go around curves. Because if you're ever trying to do a curve with a flat blade, you end up with basically like an octagon. You end up not really having a round edge. This time around, since my eyeballs on this thing are fairly round and the mouth is fairly round, this is probably the only tool I'm really going to need. Except, like I said, I want to have a starter hole. And you can use almost anything for a starter hole. Sometimes the kits come with a poker that allows you to transfer the pattern. You lay the pattern on the pumpkin and you poke around the pattern so that you can see where to cut. Those are great for starter holes. Since I don't have one of those, I'm going to use my knife. And I'm just going to poke a hole. It doesn't have to be right on the edge. To put my little gadget in. And then you basically just saw your way around. Like so. And I'm going until I hit my little half moon. And I'm going to take it out, turn it around to do my half moon. I like having my eyeballs with an iris in it. I don't know what it is. I know they look really cool if you just have a plain circle for an eyeball and stuff. But for whatever reason, I like to have an iris in my eyeballs. I almost always do. Sometimes I poke an extra little hole in there for a pupil. But since I'm doing a really simple one today, I'm not going to bother with that. Now, if you're all the way around, and your lines match up, and it should come out. Now this is a corn cob holder. I really like these for this particular reason. Really, really easy way to get them out, because sometimes if you're on a bit of an angle, sometimes they won't poke through to the back, and sometimes if it's a tight curve or something, it's hard to get something in there to pop it out like I did with the lid. So I discovered that this works really well. Now I've just got a little bit of furry stuff. There we go. I'm going to get rid of that. And there's one eyeball. Very simple, but it should be really effective. You can also use this as your starter hole, because really all you need to have is someplace to put that little blade to get started. Now, aside from the time it took to empty out the goo in the middle, this pumpkin's probably going to take 5 minutes to carve. So really, it's a simple, easy design that anybody can draw. It doesn't have to be like this, the flatter topped circles that I made. This would work any other time. I would have just made a basic circle, except, like I said, I've got that framework that I'm following the lines on to make sure that I have the eyes in the right place. So basically, you would just draw a circle and then put your half moon in it. That one popped out nice and easy. And the hole is fairly clean. If you have any stringies, you can just scrape them off. They're actually both not too bad. So there's my 2 eyeballs. Now he looks a little surprised, so I think that's going to be kind of cool. So now all that's left is my mouth. Same process again, poke a hole, my gadget in it, and around I go. Now I learned something interesting this year that I didn't know before, and I'm going to try it out. I have heard that you can keep your pumpkins from rotting as quickly by taking your carved pumpkin and dropping it in a pail of water that has some bleach in it. Now I have some pumpkins in my pile here that I'm doing that are too big to fit in a pail, so in a way I'm going to have a chance to see if it works or not, because some of the pumpkins I'm going to do this with because they'll fit in the pail, and some of them won't fit in the pail, so they won't have it done. So I should be able to compare and see whether or not it actually makes a difference to the life of the pumpkin. Now, here's something. If you happen to carve on an angle, like I just did, okay, the hole the light is shining through is going to be smaller than the hole that you cut in the front. So you can fix that, if you did that, I just kind of going, do it where you can see it, kind of going around a little bit more, just to make sure. Sometimes you hit an angle and it just doesn't end up quite the way you expect. Anyways, so that should fix that problem. So that pumpkin is actually done. I've got my lid all ready to go, like so. And what I want to do is we want to see how it looks. So I'm going to put my little handy dandy flameless candle in it and turn out some lights so we can see. So there's one light down. There we go. I know it's daytime in here, so it might not show up as well as at night. But there's my flickery candle. Very simple, anybody can do that. And it actually looks pretty cool. So that's it. That's all there is to a very simple, easy pumpkin. Anybody can do this, like I've said 3 times now, I think. So, I mean, why not do it? Why not have the fun of carving pumpkins? You can paint them, you can do all sorts of other stuff to them. But to me, this is just good old-fashioned fun. And since anybody who's a grown-up can do this, obviously any child can do it. All you really need to do is make sure that the big part, the sharp knife cutting the lid off part, is done by the adult. These tools don't really have pokies on them. So you can let your kids play along too. They can dig things out of the middle, they can draw things on the front. Kids love pumpkin carving, they really do. Especially when they get to see it in the dark. Anything that involves being up after dark, they seem to really enjoy. So that's it for today. I will be making some more elaborate pumpkins. Still simple enough for anybody, but more elaborate than this soon. And I hope that you'll come back and check out those videos as well. Till then, happy carving!